Hi, everyone. I am Jenna Carson. I'm a chaplain and captain in the United States Air Force, and some of you may know me from season 4 of Called to Create, where I talked about becoming the first female military chaplain endorsed by the LDS Church. This season, I've been privileged to be a guest host. I interviewed McKay Coppins, and now I'm so happy to be back hosting again and interviewing the luminous, beautiful, hilarious, one and only Mallory Everton. Welcome, Mallory.
Oh, Jenna, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for saying all that nice stuff. The
I have
best
so many.
adjectives.
You truly are luminous, and you've
Oh,
made so many of us laugh for so many years. And I can't speak for everyone, but I can say I'm so grateful for you. And I feel like a lot of listeners are just thrilled to be hearing from you today.
oh,
So let
that's
me
so
read
sweet.
your bio
Okay.
so everyone remembers and learns about the frogs.
Yes, please.
Mallory Everton is a filmmaker from Portland, Oregon, best known in Utah circles as one of the original cast members and writers of Studio C, a sketch comedy show on BYU TV. She is also the creator of Freelancers, an online series produced by JK Studios, the media company she co-founded with her friends from Studio C. She currently resides in Los Angeles with her four lovely roommates and two frogs, where she spends her days writing things her manager dislikes, playing feral women in independent projects, and more recently, co-hosting the Soloist podcast. Mallory, tell us briefly about the frogs. You used to have cats
I
or
did.
a cat, and now you
I
have
used to have a
frogs.
cat.
How did
Used to have a
frogs
cat.
come into this situation?
So I love my house in Los Angeles. It's been such a interesting and cool chapter in my life. I was raised in the Mormon church, which means that I thought that when I was 35 years old, I would have a husband and children, but I don't. And in lieu of that, my life is full of so much joy and community. And I wouldn't call it a consolation prize even. It's been really wonderful. So my house, I have four roommates. We have enough space. We throw really fun dinner parties and we threw a homecoming dance last October. And it can be a little transient because it's LA. So a lot of people are coming in for a project or for some school or something that moves them around. And it's an expensive place to live and it's kind of intense. And our house, we try to make it a little haven where people can come and land and hopefully make their art or whatever it is that they're dreaming about. And people come and go with their pets. So we had a cat named Toothless last year, and right now we have two frogs that my friend and roommate Megan, that they're her frogs, and I like to eat breakfast and watch them swim around. It's the best. I love it.
Do they inspire your creativity at all?
Mostly, if I'm honest, I find them like kind of spooky. They have really weird
Mm,
faces, and so
uh-huh.
there's something there's something about it that I just can't look away from. They're like little aliens, and so
Uh-huh.
it just makes me feel like a little kid, watching frogs. Or
Yes.
so I
Yes.
think, yeah. To answer your question, I would say anything that awakens the child in you, I would say helps with your creativity.
What is really fueling your creativity right now? Like, what's the thing that has you super excited?
Project wise, or just energy or vibe wise, like what do you?
Both. Both.
That's such a good question. For a long time, I feel like I kind of was running away from the things I really wanted to make.
Hmm.
I'm really, really interested in screenwriting and making more films, but it's very hard. It's very hard. And I came up writing sketches. And so you can finish a sketch in an hour or less. You can finish one
Hmm.
in 15 minutes if the idea is really clean and like comes out really fast. But as a screenplay, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. And every once in a while, like I wrote a movie with my friend Whitney, who was in Studio C with me, and we wrote it in 2 weeks, but that was crazy. And that doesn't happen very often. And I would like to be a multiple screenwriter, like
Yes. Yes.
I would like to have multiple screenplays to my name. And so the thing that I'm really doing right now is trying to clear out time to become more of a dedicated writer because I've always been a little bit of a jack of all trades. Like I'm an actor and sometimes I'm podcasting and sometimes I'm punching up scripts for somebody and it's great, but all those gigs can really clog the pipeline when you're wanting to really finish something long and maybe
Yeah.
say something you're afraid to say, which is kind of what always fuels my creativity is like what feels like it's going to hurt just a little bit to say out loud. It's one of my guiding stars in general. Even with comedy, I feel like it's often true. It's like, say the thing out loud that you kind of think you're not supposed to say out loud. And then suddenly you'll be in this space of relatability. Even if it's super specific to you, like the things that make me a total weirdo, they don't have to be the same things that make somebody else feel like a total weirdo. They will unleash that part of them, hopefully, like, wow, that's weird. And I'm like that too. I love that about how if you get more specific, you also get more universal that way. So,
Yes. It's
yeah, it's
kind of
the
this magical thing.
screenplays.
Yeah, screenplays.
Yeah.
And you mentioned getting into this writing practice because you have been doing so many amazing
Mhm.
projects over the years. And in a couple minutes, I'm going to ask you kind of to share that journey with us. But right now, I'd like to ask you what your writing process is looking like, how you've developed a writing discipline. Do you have
Mm.
any things that help you get in the flow state?
Ah, I love these questions. Jenna, I love this topic. I want to ask you all the same questions, but I know you're interviewing me. So, but if you're allowed to answer your questions, I'd love to hear too, because this is my favorite, one of my favorite things about living in LA is that it's full of
Yeah.
creative people.
Yes.
So even if there's like, if I'm in an awkward situation where, there's no chit chat happening or the conversation's really struggling, I can always ask somebody like, so tell me about what you're creating. And everyone always just like flops open because it's full of artists and dreamers. And I, like I said, I came up doing sketch, and sketch is really fast and furious. And I will admit, I think that it took me honestly until I was probably in my early 30s to really learn that unless somebody was cracking the whip and like telling me I needed to do something, I didn't really have a great discipline isn't even the right word, but I didn't have a great routine for writing that actually really helped me feel, I guess supported is the word, because I I think I was creating in a lot of panic and fear. Like
Mm,
if somebody is telling me I have to do this, then it would force me to the edge of procrastination where like I've heard before that like I have ADHD as a lot of creative people do. And procrastination is one of like the hallmarks of ADHD, but also just of life. And when I was in high school, I remember I used to like put off writing papers, and in college too, until literally like 5 hours before. It's like 2 in the morning, the papers due at 7 a.m. And it wasn't until then that I started feeling like I could make decisions. It was because I was forced to. So I was in like decision paralysis, like perfectionism mode
mhm.
before that. And it took me being down to the wire on a deadline that was put on me to really be able to get to that place of making those quick decisions and believing in them because I had to.
Yes.
And so it wasn't until I moved to LA and I was trying to write things to submit to my management and trying to finish a pilot just for me, not for anybody else, that I started realizing like, I'm so cruel to myself that I might not ever be able to write anything just by myself. Like, I might always need a partner who's telling me I'm doing a good job, or maybe I just can't write a lot. Like, maybe I just can't write without a deadline. And I felt really limited by that. And even got to a point where I felt so burned out that maybe I shouldn't really be doing creative stuff anymore. Maybe that should just be a hobby, and I should let it all go back to school for something else. I've always been really drawn to anything where I got to work with people, and so I was like looking at nursing schools for a little while. And something else happened. And instead I started getting all these little odd jobs, and I decided to try and figure out how to make them as fun as possible for me. You know, these low stakes jobs where I was just rewriting something for somebody, or writing a 2-page ad or something like that, and figure out what really lit me up about it. And then also make the process as easy as possible. I got asked to write an episode of an animated show for a company, and it actually, I really am grateful to that person who extended me that job at that particular time, because I really was thinking like I'm not capable of writing by myself, because my brain is full of like the worst critic. Like she's just basically saying like that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. That won't work. Here's why it won't work. Like projecting all the time, and you can't move when you're doing
Yep.
that. So I got as corny as I possibly could. I was like, I'm gonna listen to like the Paddington soundtrack. Like the kindest music I possibly can. I'm going to light a candle. I'm going to let myself take breaks every 25 minutes and set a timer. So, like, I'm allowed to just read or relax or lay down. I'm like, I'm going to set up like the sweetest little elementary school creativity zone for myself. And just how can I make this as easy and fun as possible? And man, it changed a lot for me. And I think it's because I started with some of those physical things and they did start to, and I was doing a lot of other things too, meditating and learning a lot more about Buddhism and like various spiritual modes that could help me that I could borrow from to try and build a better sense of just enoughness. So that it's like the stuff you get to create is just a bonus. Like it's not you trying to earn anything with what you're making. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're
Mhm.
just here to enjoy it. You're here to like what you like and talk about it, you know? So that's actually where my process has come from. That really kind of painful part of my life where I was trying to really reckon with those inner demons that really made it me feel like maybe I'm just not a writer. Maybe I can't do this, but I can. I
Yes.
just have to be so gentle. That's one of my mantras is like, Mallory, just be so gentle today. Like, and when I do that, I find that I feel free enough to play and to think of things as a sandbox to remember that it's really okay if it's bad. And actually bad might be really good because it might spark you into the next little hallway that you go into with an idea. So I don't know if that answers your question amazingly, but that my process is all about like kindness and like trying to let myself be like a happy little kid.
I find that amazing, better than I could have imagined. I thank you for being open about the difficulty and the voices of
Mm,
opposition in our heads and outside of our heads. Your bio, I know this is a joke, but also true, probably. You know, you
yeah.
said she spends her days writing things her manager dislikes. And this is a huge part of being a writer is rejection and
Yeah.
refinement and writing things that people don't like.
Yes.
And I bet your manager loves a lot of things that you write.
Thank
But
you. Yeah.
to get to the good stuff, like you said, sometimes we have to get all the other things out. And it's not that
Hmm.
that stuff is bad, as you said. It's just it's a process. You're reminding me of something that Elizabeth Gilbert says in her book Big Magic, which I do recommend. I think that's a brilliant book. Have you read it?
Yes, I love her and I
So
love that book.
good. It's so good. But it's a little discouraging sometimes because she says, I'm paraphrasing, she says this much more beautifully, but she says, don't expect your art to pay the bills.
Yes.
And for some of us, and for you, Mallory, your art does have to pay the bills because
Right.
you didn't go to nursing school. You didn't pursue that. And as you said that, I'm like, well, I thank God that you didn't pursue that path because just knowing you, that doesn't seem Mallory to me. I mean, I'm sure you'd be an amazing nurse, but what seems Mallory to me is your work as an artist. And
Mm,
don't get me wrong, I love nursing. My mom's a nurse. Nurses are artists in their own way and they
totally.
care for people. And yet I just can't imagine a world where we don't have Mallory creating comedy and writing. Like it just doesn't add up. So I'm glad you're doing this. And I want to ask you how you navigate this difficulty. You wrote this
Mhm.
line to our
Yeah.
podcast producer in an email. You said, because she had complimented you on your work, and you
Mm.
said, what people don't see in between the big, fun projects is the sometimes very scary, shapeless life of an artist. Comes with so many gifts and so many trials. So, would
Yeah.
you be willing to say more about that? Because I can imagine it's very scary, and there's a lot of times where you might be asking, where's the next paycheck coming from?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally, when I read Big Magic, I think it was in maybe 2021. And I remember reading that part about like, don't make your art pay the bills. And I was like, oh, I don't have anything but art to pay the bills or versions of art, various like I have different skills and different little pockets I can go into, but all of them are a type of gigging. And when I was really thinking about like what do I want to do other than comedy and writing and stuff, it was like, what about music? I was like, oh, that's more art. You can't do you know, and there's something kind of stressful about it for sure. And the shapelessness is, it's because it's a patchwork life, at least it is for me, but I think it's probably true even for the people, for like A-list celebrities. When you really think about it, even like Timothy Chalamet is a gig worker. He's taken a project
Mhm.
at a time. You know, like the guy who played Fiyero in Wicked, he was doing like three jobs at once when he was shooting Wicked, and it sounded exhausting. But I was thinking, like, part of the reason he probably did that is because he's thinking, like, this is an incredible moment, and I don't know if I'm going to get this again. Even somebody
Yes.
that's successful. And he
Yes.
didn't say that, but I was like reading in between the lines. I know that that's probably what I would be thinking. Like, for some reason, have all this energy and all these opportunities flowing toward me, and it might end. In fact, it probably will. The sort of ebb and flow of like your success, and definitely of like, I'm going to put it in quotes, fame. I don't even know what that is
Mhm.
exactly,
Mhm.
but that's not something in your control. And I think
Mhm.
that's become really apparent to me as far as like trying to make sense of the shapeless life. It's like, I don't really know what makes people reach out to me. Like, why do sometimes five people reach out at once and then I go 3 months without hearing anything and wondering if no money will come in? It forces me into a relationship with God that I will say I really enjoy. I had an old professor tell me a couple months ago, and I think this doesn't just apply to LA, but I think it's a nice example of it. He said he lived in LA for a long time with his family, and I was telling him, like, I don't know how I'm paying my bills. Like, I don't know why this is working. And he was like, I know exactly what you mean. He was like, LA will take care of you for the amount of time you're supposed to be there. And then when it's done with you, they'll spit you out. And it sounds cold, but actually, I find that so heartening. It's like, it's not about success or failure. It's about like, this right now is your path. And we have a lot of comforting ideas, I think, from our spiritual background that would imply that, like, that basically life will take care of you and consecrate what you're doing, and that you can't mess up what's meant for you, basically, like,
Yes.
so it can feel like a scramble and it can feel really terrible, but I like the idea that, like, I'll be in LA until it's like, bye girl, you got somewhere
Mhm.
else to be. And I like that a lot more than like I couldn't hack it or I just wasn't a person who could make it work. It's like I don't think that's maybe what's ever going on with us or
Yeah.
artists in general. It's so clear to me. That's, I think, one of the things I like about how shapeless and scary the patchwork life is it really, really puts into stark clarity how many lies we tell about success and failure and how they just can't be true. They can't be true. We know so many talented people who do all the right things and their situations don't, they're not able to pay the bills with their art. We don't know why. And then we don't know why this person who, like, I don't know, made the right cat joke on TikTok and is able to literally start an empire, a year later or 2 years later. And I don't know why. I don't know why. And we don't need to like poo poo on anybody's work in that situation. But to me, I'm like, God, that's my only answer. And I'll do art for as long as I feel like God wants me to. And then if and when he lets me do something more stable, I'll do it. But I'm starting to think that that's not what he wants me to do.
Can you tell us more about your relationship with God and how you maybe feel close to God in the creative process or not close?
Oh, that's a great way of saying it. Because I think that's the confidence that I've developed through the past couple of years. I've called these years my wilderness years for a while because the Studio C chapter just kind of like, it was its own little block of just like, oh, we are heading right up these stairs. And I was
Yeah.
like with all
Yeah.
my college friends. And I was like, this is a crazy thing. I'm literally making a sketch comedy show at the last place anyone would think that this would even exist. I don't know why this is working. It feels like a miracle that's like on the pin of a head as a pin, like that could only happen in this weird moment in time
Yes.
with these people. And it felt really special to be a part of it. But you can imagine, like, when that shape breaks down and you enter like a shapeless life of like, wait, I don't go to 8 years of medical school and then do residency or whatever. Like I just have to just take one job at a time and like figure out like I don't want to do this at all. Like give me another 6 year job and health insurance, please.
The days
But
of health
yeah,
insurance. They're
yeah,
great.
I miss, the marketplace is fine, but it's pretty expensive and the insurance isn't great. But I feel like this time has really taught me that, oh, I just feel so much freer and so much more fearless than I did before. Like if I often tell people that like I thought that Studio C, and this is like, I was in my 20s. I was 22 when I started that show. Like my brain
Wow.
wasn't fully developed yet. I thought that it was like, oh, I'm just going to keep going upstairs. Like here's this show, and then I'm going to work on something bigger, and then I'll work on something bigger until I die, I guess. Then I'll become a god and it's going to be amazing. I just
Uh-huh.
pictured like a very steady upward trajectory. And I wasn't really thinking about the fact that like the bottom would drop out and like I'd have to like figure out my identity like separate from these 9 people that we'd kind of like become so enmeshed as this like family, which was beautiful, but complicated when it comes to like, what do we do next and how do we make money next? And I didn't think that it could be this much of a roller coaster. I really thought it was just like, well, I got really lucky. Like the first thing I was working on, like out of college, ended up working and paying me. So I guess I'm just one of those lucky artists who's gonna have a good and easy life.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I didn't, though. I'm so glad that's not how it was for me. And I wouldn't have been able to say that probably even like 3 years ago. But oh, I'm so glad to know that like it's not just like you get lucky once and then your whole life is set. Like expect twists and turns and trust that like, man, even the really weird ones, the really hard ones, they can be so like shockingly beautiful. And it's really helped me develop a sense that like there will be somebody for me to connect with and something for me to make for the rest of my life wherever I go. I might not know who the person I'm connecting with is or people, and I might not know what I'm making now, but I know that both of those things will be happening because I have I have tried so hard. I've tried so hard to quit. And I can't actually. Like and not in a way where I feel trapped by it. I think it's what I'm supposed to do with my time.
Yes. Yes. What advice would you give listeners who are feeling a pull to do something creative and to dedicate more time, but might feel afraid
Yeah.
because of the uncertainty?
That's such a good question. I just don't think we need to be scared of ourselves. I don't think we need to be scared that we're bad. Because I think that's a lot of what maybe freaks people out is like that they're not going to be good or some of my favorite thinkers on this subject, Ethan Hawke, he put out this TED talk during like the 2020 lockdown time that was so good. My brother sent it to me while I was making a movie and with like an 8-person crew that I mentioned before that Whitney and I'd written in 2 weeks. And I was just like, what am I doing? This feels so scary. I don't even like, we made it. It was about COVID and COVID. We were only 3 months into it. I was like, we don't even have any context. I don't know why I
Yeah.
thought this was a good idea. And he sent me this TED talk at the perfect moment. And basically, Ethan Hawke talks about, and he's such a guru. Like, if you want a creative, like inspiring thought, go look up Ethan Hawke talking about anything. Really, he's really thought a lot about these subjects. And he basically said, like, it is not our job to figure out whether or not our art is good or bad. It's not our job at all. Like, and historically, we're not even good at knowing what's good or bad. Like, you can look at obviously artists like Van Gogh or whatever who got really famous after they died. It's like we don't know what's good or what's bad. The
Mhm.
collective isn't the best judge often. And so the truth is, if you feel called, I would say think about it as a relationship between you and God and like a conversation between you and God and an opportunity for you to strengthen a muscle that when you feel called, you answer. All you have to do is pick up the phone. You know, you're really just having a conversation with God. It's not about impressing people. It's not about money. Like Rick Rubin's also one of my creative gurus, and he wrote this beautiful book called The Creative Act. And in it, he talks about like the only reason you make your creative work is not so it impresses people. It's not so that it makes tons of money or that, it launches you into the next category of like your artist echelons or whatever. It's so that you make room for your next creative work. It's
Mm.
like you're just clearing out the pipeline. And sometimes when I remind myself how simple what we're doing really is, I don't feel the fear as much because it's not really what we think it is. You're really just, why do you feel called to the idea? Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this so well too. She talks about how sometimes people talk about needing passion in order to create. And she thinks that's too much pressure a lot of the
Yep.
time. It's like you don't have to like follow it. It doesn't have to be something you're like called to like a beacon. Curiosity is enough. Just
Hmm.
like, why am I curious about this thing? Sorry, I'm quoting so many different people, but I have so many thinkers that I just feel like I don't even have my own thoughts. I'm just like an amalgamation of a bunch of people I love. But Jennifer Finlayson Fife, at one point I heard her say something about how she believes that God plants seeds in us and that our job is just to uncover them. And
Hmm.
so it's like, why do I have this seed of curiosity inside me? What is there for me to learn about this? And so when I turn it into a conversation with me and God, instead of a conversation with me and like the masses or popularity or money, you know, I feel a lot less scared. And
Hmm.
I would say don't put too much pressure on it. Curiosity is enough. And also, it's here for you. It's here for you, as in, it's here for you to enjoy. Your creativity is for you. You're your first audience, so you make what delights you, but also the work is its own reward. So
Yes.
honestly, I'm just excited for you. Whoever is out there who's listening right now, I'm excited for you and what you're gonna make. Like you're gonna have a great time.
That's so beautiful, Mallory. I want to go back to when you were a little Mallory, when you were a little girl. When did you first uncover the seed of comedy or creativity in your life that you remember?
Yeah, I wish I could think of the moment. The first thing I can remember is I had these old tapes. I had these old tapes called the Scripture Scouts that I would fall asleep to at night.
Mhm.
And I loved those Scripture Scouts. It was like these three kids and their dog Boo, and they would just explore the scriptures. I think they would go back in time, like the Ten Issues Among the Nephites, kind of, if anybody
Uh-huh,
ever read
uh-huh.
those.
We listened to those growing up in the car.
Did you
The
really?
tapes, yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I was very into, Mormon children's historical fiction, I guess.
Yep.
And I remember rewriting the entire tape series just by hand and like drawing pictures and everything.
Wow.
So I guess that's my first memory of writing that I can really remember. And then I wanted to be an author illustrator when I was a kid for a little while. I'm a terrible artist, like a visual artist. But I loved it and I thought it was so fun. And I I honestly just always felt like I was creating little games for myself and kind of getting lost. And I was the youngest of six, but I was kind of a trailer. So I played a lot by myself. Like I remember sometimes I didn't have like I when I didn't have toys, I remember like playing with my mom's sewing needles and like sticking them all into the ironing board and pretending that they were a little town. Does it make me sound like a lonely little child?
No, just imaginative.
Yes, I was. I was.
Yeah.
And I was always like, and then once I was getting older, I always felt like I had a very active imagination that was sometimes kind of troublesome. Like I used to scare my friend Megan so bad when we were having sleepovers. I'd be like, what if we see a face in the window when we go upstairs? And she'd be like, Mallory, stop it. Don't put stuff like that in my head. And so I think I've always just had like a kind of rich like imagination space. But I still like did not think I was going to be an artist. I think I just thought that that was how everybody was. That's kind
Mhm.
of the way we all
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
And I think it's probably possible that we all do have like pockets like that, but that's the kind of kid I was. I think I was just always kind of getting lost in some little new imaginal community.
And when you went to college, what were you planning on doing before you even had Studio
Yeah.
C? Like, what were you studying?
I was planning on nursing,
Oh, you
actually.
were. Okay, okay,
Yeah, that was my plan.
okay.
I look back and I'm like, was that because my sister's a nurse, or I grew up with a brother who was in and out of the hospital a lot?
Uh-huh.
Or was it because I watched a lot of ER as a kid and maybe I actually just wanted to make TV about
Ah,
doctors? Who
you wanted to
knows?
live it out.
But I think it was also I think it was also just growing up feeling on some level like the arts were selfish, like that making art
Ah,
was not service and it wasn't really
mm,
giving back. And also, I'd worked so hard in school. I was like, what am I like? I don't even need to go to school for art. Like, why would I even get it to,
oh
you know what
yeah.
I mean? So I think I really struggled to honestly accept the call, which I was continually like, I was in my school musical as a senior and I had somebody come up to me afterward and was like, oh, Mallory, you were so good. What art school are you going to? And I was like, I'm not going to art school. I'm going to help people. And I remember being like that disdainful about it. Like I was like,
Mhm.
I'm not some selfish, and this is not me saying that I actually believe this. This is me speaking to the fact that I had such a limited belief around art
Mhm.
and it being meaningful as a like life path when I was that age. I just didn't have a ton of exposure to that in my family either. And that's not to say anything negative about my family, but we didn't have people who were pursuing art as their career in my family. And so I didn't have a path like that in mind at all. So actually, what happened was I got into NYU and Boston U, and I went to go and tour the campus before I officially accepted with my best friend from high school. And I just remember thinking, like, well, this is where I want to go. And I'd gotten into their College of Nursing and getting really excited with her. And then the next morning, we went to the campus tour. And I got to this like beautiful library that was like 11 stories tall and looked up at all these beautiful books. And I just knew that I was going to go to BYU. And I really didn't want to go to BYU, to be honest. I mean that with no disrespect. It's a wonderful school. But I turned to her and I was like, we've only got a couple hours left before we need to leave New York. Do you want to like get hot dogs and go and tour around
Mhm.
the cities, just like two broke 18-year-olds? And she was like, yes, but what are you talking about? I thought you were going to go to this school. And I was like, I'm not, I'm going to go to BYU. And we talked about it kind of all day. And I actually have used that experience my entire life since as just a little bit of a guidepost, because even though I didn't want to go to BYU, that felt so good. I was so positive. I just felt like I was being so gently and warmly nudged, like, you're going to go to BYU. And I remember hearing Richard G. Scott talk about the test of bias, like how sometimes if you're really biased toward like what the spirit is telling you, it's possible that you just want to like just really think it out and pray about it just to double check that you're not just biased. But when you are encouraged to do something you don't want to do, it's a pretty good sign. And I felt like really, really good about it. And now I look back and I'm like, if I had gone to NYU, I would have been paying like astronomical rent and astronomical tuition to be in the nursing school. And it would have been almost impossible for me to, I don't think I would have had the confidence to apply to Tisch, which is one of the like most renowned film schools in the country. I don't think I would have switched to film, but I went to BYU and I had a half scholarship and I met a bunch of friends and I got into sketch comedy and my major was film by like the second semester of school. And I just see so much grace in it. It didn't make sense at the time, but that's the thing. I'm like, that's why I feel so often that my conversation is always a conversation with God. Like you might be thinking you're talking to a person about a relationship or an opportunity, but it just feels like it's all just a conversation with God for me lately, that
Yeah.
I can just kind of trust my gut and keep moving forward because there's something really beautiful going on and I don't understand it. That's all I really know.
I love that. It goes back to what you said that nothing can stop what God has for you in life, all these good things. All these
Yeah.
good things. How did Studio C start, Mallory? How did that even come
Yeah.
about?
It was such a slow burn, slow process. And I'm just like a cog in a much longer story because we didn't start Divine Comedy, which was the sketch comedy group on campus. It had been going on for 15 years when I got into the group. I think there was a group called the Garants and a group called Divine Comedy that the beginnings are a little fuzzy to me, but I know that they kind of existed at the same time. And then eventually Divine Comedy was the only sketch comedy on campus. And so I just was like a part of a legacy. I auditioned because my friend from high school auditioned. And actually, first, I was the videographer for a year, and that's when I was applying to film school. So I did videos for the group. It's interesting too. Like the group that made up Studio C, the cast of Studio C, we got in by twos every year. So like Matt and Natalie got in 2007, and Whitney and Jeremy got in 2008, and Jason and I got in 2009. And there were 10 of us that ended up on Studio C eventually. And it was just a fun way to spend our time. It was just like, for me, it was a haven because BYU was a bit of a culture shock for me. I wasn't really used to being around that many people of the same faith. And I honestly wasn't prepared as much for what it was going to be like to meet Mormons that I didn't like at all. or that I
Hmm.
was like,
Hmm.
wow, you're really fake, or like you're actually using your calling as like a way to lord over people. And I didn't experience this in my tiny ward in Portland. But when there are 40,000 Mormons in one place, you're going to have people you don't get along with. And
Hmm.
you don't really have the option to just be like, if you're Mormon, you're good, or I'm going to like you, which is easier when your community is small. At least it was for me growing up. And so I was just feeling all this like tension and immediately wanted to transfer, which is so funny because sometimes I think that's why I had such a strong spiritual experience was because I needed to really know because it was going to be hard. So yeah, I get into this group and it's kind of a haven. We get to make fun of the BYU culture, which to me was like a little toxic sometimes.
Hmm.
You know, we had all of these, yeah, power structures and kind of status symbols that were like not very Christian per se and kind of silly. And we got to laugh about it. And so that's how it initially started for me. And I just bonded with these people. And when I got into BYU, YouTube was still banned on campus, but I just happened to be there when like YouTube and Divine Comedy met. And I think that's why Studio C happened. That and, you know, a thousand other miracles or whatever. But yeah, we started posting our sketches online. We had one music video go decently viral. It
Hmm.
got like 300,000 views in a weekend kind of a thing. And for us, we'd only had like 14K views on anything beforehand. And there were previous generations of Divine Comedy that had approached BYU TV and said, "Hey, are you interested in a sketch comedy show? We've got this like feeder group over here that's like testing material in front of live crowds all the time. Could be kind of a cool thing." And the initial answer was, "We're not interested in escapist content, like
Huh.
escapist media, you know, like that
Wow.
comedy is basically to numb and not, and it's not important enough, you know, or useful or nutritional enough." So yeah, because of like the video success and the people who happened to be at BYU TV when I was over in Divine Comedy and my cohort was over there, we just meshed at the right moment. That video went viral. Some people from BYU TV came over to check out what's going on with these kids because we were starting to sell out our shows pretty quickly because that was kind of building over those years too. And then it took like a year and a half from there. Like it was such a slow process. Like we started kind of developing a pilot. We thought that the show was going to be totally Mormon specific at first because that's the way BYU, like Divine Comedy was. But then they were encouraging us like to try and think more broadly. And we were like, yeah, but this is our thing. Like, and I'm so glad they encouraged us to do that. Like we never would have been able to reach as many people if we had been only talking to Mormons. I learned a lot about that through that period of time. But it felt a little bit like this thing that like at first it was very much like don't quit your day job. We just are this is a weird experiment and this doesn't make any sense at this particular building, but there are a couple people who believe in it. And then like a year in, they hired us as full-time employees. And then it just kind of built and built until it was literally like when I go back and look at my journal entries from like 2013, 2014-ish, it's literally all Studio C all day. It's like if I'm not in rehearsal, then I'm writing. And if I'm not writing, then I'm filming something. If I'm not filming something, we're like visiting a kid in the hospital. And if I'm not doing that, I'm hanging out with all of those same people and we're like coming up with ideas. Like it was completely all consuming in such a fantastic way, but it also was unsustainable for that reason, probably
Hmm.
for me at least. Like I look back and I'm like, you had no work-life balance, babe.
It was your whole life. It was your whole life,
Oh
right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
and it was just one of those crazy freight trains, and you just like hang on for dear life, and try to enjoy it as much as you can. But man, still, when people come up to me and ask me, if, like, remember this sketch? I sometimes have no idea what they're talking about. We filmed so
Yeah.
many sketches
Yeah.
so quickly that I don't even remember. Like, I have no memory of some of them. It's really shocking. But yeah.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's not shocking because when you are producing so much and living so in such a fast-paced environment, how does your brain
Mhm.
possibly hold on to all those things? So that makes
Totally.
sense to me. It's interesting, Mallory, because you talked about how before this happened, the BYU TV kind of culture thought it was just escapism, didn't
Yeah.
really understand the value of comedy. And something clicked for me as you were telling the story of Studio C. I realized I think Studio C probably played a huge role. Like I'm looking at it as like this watershed moment in LDS church culture where
Mm.
we started accepting as a whole the value of comedy. I wonder.
Oh.
I think that it probably was a watershed moment. What do you think? Do you agree?
Oh, well, I'm so honored to be a part of that moment if that is the case. I mean, I definitely feel like we were preceded by like, I grew up listening to John, by the way. I remember thinking he was
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah.
I love Kirby Hayborn and his films and, you know, the singles word guys and
Oh,
everything. I feel like they
yeah.
paved. Also, even
Yeah.
just knowing that Jared Hess was Mormon and that John Heater were Mormon when they made Napoleon Dynamite. There were definitely like it was coming up no matter what. You know, like
Yes.
I feel like
Yes.
there were enough people because I think about this a lot that like the way that the church has been built, there are certain specialties that like as a community is growing you just don't have, and I feel like we're still developing like our artistic and media sensibilities as a community, you know. I think in part because of our culture around those things and some discouragement in those areas that like the media is evil or
Hmm.
whatever. But eventually, the hope is that the community contains craftspeople of all areas, you know, architects so our buildings are beautiful and businessmen so everything runs smoothly. And, you know, like that's the hope. But I
Yeah.
think we're still developing our artistic sensibility and our attitudes and like what it is that honestly, I mean, we could talk about this at some other point too. Adults are really allowed to watch and make and create and talk about when we're still figuring out our media literacy as a group, I feel like.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I could see what you're saying, and I would like I hope that that's happened because actually I even needed that because I remember when I started doing Studio C, I was writing sketches while I was studying abroad in London for the film program, and I just remember feeling like such a hack and imposter in that space because I was like, I'm just making like funny sketches, like 2-minute videos and stuff like that. And all of these people around me want to make like films, like about real things on shot on 8 millimeter. And I'm like, I'll shoot it with my phone and we'll just wear funny hats and do funny voices. And what am I doing? And just not thinking that it was really like real art or that it was really worth my time or that it was doing anything important. And I remember learning a little bit, like the first little bit of the lesson was on that trip when I realized, like, I think I might just be a person who is not necessarily in this for criticism or for, like, I didn't get into the film program because I love critiquing movies. I got into the film program because I like making things.
Yeah.
So it helped me to first channel that it was like, you're allowed to just make things. It doesn't have to be so that people will think. Like I brought up this a lot because it's been something I've had to work through a lot. It's not about being impressive or like making the film that changes the conversation, you know, that kind of thing. Like you can't really, in my opinion, I don't feel like you can create from an honest place when you're trying to manipulate the outcome like that.
Mm.
But the next part of the lesson came years later when we were visiting these kids. And like, because we were able to have some really special moments with some families. And I grew up, as I said, with a brother who was in and out of the hospital a lot. He had a brain tumor. And so hospitals were not a strange place for me to be. And I also had a friend who had leukemia around that time. And I realized that these families were watching Studio C together when they wanted to be together, but they didn't want to be thinking about the fact that they were in a hospital. And to me, when we talk about escapism, it's not always escapism in a bad way. Sometimes I think what we're escaping is despair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like despair is, while there is truth to the darkness in life, to think that that's all that life is, it would be a complete lie. And what I
Yes.
learned, I think, through this process and through some of these experiences is that what comedy can do, because I think people are also, you know, they're doing it with The Office and with New Girl and with like
Mhm.
these things that people might just be like, ah, that's like just funny TV. It's like, no, like there's something much more beautiful than people realize going on, I think, when you can sit like I was watching New Girl with my friend when she was on hospice. And like the fact that we got to sit there in the sort of like joyful nugget of our friendship, not completely focused on the horror of the moment, because that is not the truth. Like, that's not the full truth. Yes, she was dying,
Yes.
but also we loved each other so much and we loved laughing, and that was true too. And like, these actors are amazing and these jokes are incredible, and we get to remember that there's something to laugh about, that there's something really good going on too, and that even in the darkest moments there's so much light as well, that moments are full of darkness and light. And if we get swallowed in the darkness, we should escape from it, at least time to
Yes.
time. That's my thought on escapism in
Yes.
comedy.
I agree 100%, Mallory. I'll share a brief personal experience.
Please.
I, because it speaks to what you're saying and it's in conversation with this question of the value of comedy. I grew up in a lot of ways pretty uptight and like really type A, and I was always interested in like producing and this idea of success and whatever that meant. Just really serious, a really serious individual. And the
Mm,
movies that I loved were like really intense movies like A Beautiful Mind or, whatever
mm,
drama would just make me think about life in a different way and get me thinking. And, I just like these really thoughtful, deep, sometimes dark movies, and then
totally.
I started working in a prison.
Mm,
And it was a very violent prison, and my husband left me, and it was just like the darkest time of my life. And I feel like comedy in so many ways saved me because I would come home and I could not take another moment of sadness because I was seeing so
yeah.
much sadness in the prison and having it in my life. And like I would just eat dinner alone and watch comedy, including some of your work. And I would go back to sketches from Studio C that I love, and then I would watch new things and,
Mm,
JK Studios and also like some of the late night comedians and things.
yeah.
And I just feel like it helped me remember that what I was experiencing in that moment in time and what I was experiencing in the prison was not the whole world, which is exactly what you're saying. This is not the whole truth. And so
Yeah.
I think for so many of us who have callings where we are called to show up in really hard places, comedy is a relief that helps us be able to keep going back.
Mm.
And the deeper I get into chaplaincy, the more I feel that God has a sense of humor and that comedy is not just fun, it's essential. And so I want to thank you for your work because it is so important.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
That's so beautiful, and I just could not agree more. I think that we're always going to have limited perspectives. We're always going to have limited perspectives, but it's really nice to have tools like this to help us broaden our view. Like, I don't think we get to see with full God eyes in this life, but I think that being able to experience those poles, even in one day, like, even that feeling, like sometimes, even though I'm in a really hard place, there's some part of me that also knows that I'm very safe and loved, you know?
yes, yes,
It's kind of
yes,
paradoxical in that way, and there's something really beautiful about it.
yes. Thank you, Mallory. As we wrap up, and I want to thank you for your time because I went over time today. As we wrap up, I want to ask, like, what can listeners expect from you next? What is in the works? What should we be looking for?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm hoping that what listeners can expect from me next is to experience a lot of authenticity and honesty from me. I'm working on a horror comedy. I'm working on a rom-com. I'm trying to finish these two scripts. These days I'm really interested in honesty and not being afraid to not just be myself, but also talk about things that might be uncomfortable or that I might have been afraid to talk about in the past, and really trusting that doing those things with kindness and compassion and trying to write characters that are open minded. I actually really see the work as kind of redemptive, that a lot of times we're trying to write about things or people that we don't totally understand and figure out how to redeem those things and how to make sense of those things in our frameworks together. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, I've been branching out a lot, and
Love it.
I hope that people come with me. I hope
Yes.
that, and I hope people feel safe with me, that and at the very least can trust that you don't have to like everything I make, but just know that I'm making it with love and that I'm doing my best.
Mm, love that, Mallory. Where can we follow along? Where can we find you on
Yeah.
social?
Just follow me on Instagram. I'm
Okay.
RE Mallory on Instagram. That's the best place to follow me. I'm actually kind of slowly trying to like shut down my website because I don't update it enough and it's too much upkeep. And I don't really do Twitter anymore. I'm pretty
Okay.
social media averse in general, but that's where I've been posting things, and I'm planning on posting some more. I'm some stuff I'm scared of soon.
Oh, I'm so excited. Mallory, thank you so much for your time today. I
Thank
feel
you,
your
Jenna.
light and love and joy and just rejoice in who you are. Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. And thank you to the LDS PMA podcast for giving me the chance to host again. I love it here. I love talking to these incredible people and learning about their creative journeys. If you enjoyed this interview, be sure to tune in to more episodes of season 5, where a variety of guest hosts will be interviewing some of their favorite creators who have a wealth of wisdom to encourage you on your creative journey. May you be blessed and encouraged and lifted up in your journey. Thank you again and take care.